In a world that constantly emphasizes the importance of relationships and companionship, it's easy to feel disheartened when you find yourself walking a path of isolation. But what if this solitude is not a curse? What if it is a divine preparation, a calling to something greater that only you can fulfill? This is the reality for those chosen by God. As C.S. Lewis often explored, the chosen ones are set apart, destined for a higher purpose that sometimes requires walking a lonely road. It's not that the chosen ones are unworthy of love or relationships, but rather that their divine mission requires undivided focus. In this video, we'll explore why the chosen ones often face isolation, especially in romantic connections, and why this is not something to fear, but to embrace as part of God's greater plan. If you find yourself in this season of solitude, know that it is a preparation for something more powerful. Stay with us to discover why this isolation is not punishment, but divine purpose. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to continue this journey of faith and insight. 1. The divine purpose of isolation. For many, the feeling of isolation can be a heavy burden, especially when it comes to relationships and companionships. But for those who are chosen by God, this isolation is not a reflection of unworthiness. Rather, it is a sign of their higher calling, a divine preparation for something greater. It's easy to look at the world around us and feel like something is wrong when we walk this path alone. But the truth is that isolation serves as God's way of refining His chosen ones, preparing them for the mission He has planned for them. Consider the stories of Moses and Jesus, both of whom spent significant time in solitude before stepping into their divine purposes. Moses wandered in the wilderness for 40 years before he was called to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Similarly, Jesus retreated into the desert for 40 days and nights, preparing for his ministry and facing temptation, before embarking on his life-changing work on earth. These examples show that isolation is not a punishment, but a necessary stage in the process of divine preparation. It's during these moments of solitude that the chosen ones are able to reflect, grow in their faith, and strengthen their relationship with God. When God calls someone to a higher purpose, the distractions of the world often need to be stripped away. Relationships, while beautiful and meaningful, can sometimes serve as obstacles to fully embracing the mission ahead. God isolates the chosen ones, not to punish them, but to give them space to focus on His will, to develop deeper trust, and to rely solely on His guidance. So, if you find yourself in a season of loneliness or isolation, know that it is not a reflection of your worth. It is simply a time of preparation, a time for you to draw closer to God, understand your divine purpose, and embrace the path He has set before you. 2. The spiritual work that requires solitude. Solitude, though often viewed as a painful or isolating experience, plays a pivotal role in the lives of those chosen by God. In fact, it is in these quiet, solitary moments that the chosen ones are able to draw closest to God and deepen their spiritual connection with Him. It is a time when the distractions of the world fade, and the soul is allowed to rest and focus on the divine calling that lies ahead. The chosen ones are called to undergo spiritual refinement, a process that requires complete reliance on God. This journey cannot be completed by depending on human relationships or worldly comforts. The distractions that come with companionships and external influences can sometimes cloud the voice of God. In solitude, however, those who are chosen by God can hear Him more clearly, without the interference of noise or confusion. Solitude is not about self-imposed isolation, but about creating a space where God's voice can be the loudest in our hearts. Just as Jesus withdrew to pray in the wilderness, or Moses spent 40 days on the mountain alone with God, the chosen ones are called to retreat into quiet spaces to strengthen their faith, seek guidance, and build the trust necessary for the path that lies ahead. During times of solitude, the chosen ones are refined like gold in a furnace. Their character is shaped and tested, and they are equipped with the spiritual tools they need to fulfill their divine mission. In these moments, God is not distant but deeply present, drawing His chosen ones closer to His heart. This time of isolation serves to clarify the purpose He has set before them and to empower them with the strength, patience, and wisdom needed to navigate the journey. It is only through relying on God in solitude that the chosen ones can become the vessels He desires them to be. The more they surrender to His will and allow Him to shape their hearts, the more they will align with His divine purpose. 3. Examples of isolation in Scripture. Throughout the Bible, we see that many of the greatest leaders and spiritual figures experience periods of profound isolation, and these times were not signs of punishment, but essential to their spiritual preparation. Moses, Jesus, and Elijah all spent significant periods in solitude, each one emerging stronger and more attuned to God's call. Their experiences offer valuable lessons for those of us who may feel alone during times of spiritual refinement. Moses' journey into solitude is one of the most powerful examples. Before he could lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses spent 40 years in the desert, far from the comforts of his former life. In the wilderness, he was tested, refined, and transformed. It was there that God spoke to him through the burning bush and called him to fulfill His divine purpose. Without this period of solitude, Moses may not have been able to fully embrace the weight of his leadership, nor would he have developed the deep trust in God necessary to guide the Israelites through their journey. Similarly, Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before beginning His public ministry. During this time of isolation, He faced temptations from the enemy, and yet He emerged stronger and more determined to fulfill God's will. His time alone in the desert was crucial for his spiritual preparation, allowing him to strengthen his relationship with the Father and prepare for the challenges that lay ahead. Jesus understood that solitude was not only a time of testing, but also a time to realign his heart with God's plan. Elijah, too, sought refuge in solitude when he fled from Queen Jezebel's threats. He took shelter in a cave where he experienced God's gentle whisper and received divine instruction. It was in this quiet, isolated place that Elijah found clarity and renewed strength for his prophetic mission. Each of these biblical figures demonstrates that solitude is not a hindrance to our calling, but rather a vital process of spiritual growth. In isolation, they were able to hear God's voice more clearly, deepen their faith, and be prepared for the leadership they were called to. Solitude was their divine preparation for greater things, and it can be the same for us. 4. The chosen ones must walk a lonely road. The path of the chosen ones is rarely a crowded one. In fact, it is often marked by solitude, and this is not by accident, but by divine design. Just as the great leaders in history and Scripture walked solitary roads to fulfill their missions, so too are those chosen by God called to travel paths that require them to stand apart. This is not a path of loneliness or abandonment, but one of clarity, strength, and spiritual preparation. Consider the lives of Moses, Jesus, and even modern-day leaders who have faced great challenges. Moses had to separate himself from the comforts and distractions of Egypt to lead the Israelites into freedom. Jesus often withdrew to quiet places to pray and connect with the Father, preparing for the immense responsibility of his ministry. These figures knew that to walk the path of divine purpose, they needed to separate themselves from the noise of the world and its distractions. The chosen ones, like these biblical figures, must walk their own lonely road to receive the clarity and strength they need to fulfill God's calling. It is easy to become distracted by the demands of the world, by relationships, expectations, and societal pressures. But the chosen ones must learn to silence the noise and focus entirely on their mission. It is in this solitude that God's voice is heard most clearly. In the quiet, they can reflect, pray, and listen for the direction God is leading them. This solitude allows the chosen ones to develop the inner strength necessary for the challenges ahead. It is through walking alone that they are refined, shaped, and prepared for the responsibility that comes with their calling. The loneliness is not a sign of rejection, but a necessary step toward becoming the person God has destined them to be. Embracing this solitary path is vital for anyone called to a higher purpose. The chosen ones must trust that in their isolation, God is working in them, preparing them for the greater mission ahead. By walking alone, they gain the clarity and fortitude required to fulfill their divine calling. 5. The challenge of romantic connections. One of the most difficult aspects of the journey for the chosen ones is the absence of romantic relationships. In a world that celebrates love and companionship, this can feel like an overwhelming challenge. However, it is important to understand that the absence of romantic connections is not a curse, but rather a divine calling, a call to prioritize God's mission over personal desires. For those chosen by God, romantic relationships can often become distractions from their higher purpose. While love and companionship are gifts from God, they can also divert attention and energy away from the spiritual work that needs to be done. The chosen ones are called to fully immerse themselves in the path God has set before them, and this journey requires undivided focus. Just as Moses had to leave behind his former life in Egypt, or Jesus had to forego earthly comforts, the chosen ones are asked to set aside personal desires to fully devote themselves to God's mission. This is not to say that romantic relationships are wrong or unimportant, but rather that the divine calling of the chosen ones often requires a period of waiting and growth. The purpose is to help them build a deeper relationship with God, to grow spiritually, and to prepare for the task ahead. Just as a tree must grow strong roots before it can bear fruit, so too must the chosen ones solidify their foundation in God before they can enter into relationships that are aligned with His will. The challenge, then, is not in the absence of love, but in the opportunity to focus entirely on God. This season of isolation is not permanent. Rather, it is a time for spiritual strengthening, preparation, and reflection. God's plan for the chosen ones includes relationships, but first, He calls them to focus on their relationship with Him. In doing so, they will be better equipped for the relationships that will come later, ones that will support their divine calling and align with their spiritual purpose. It is through this challenge that the chosen ones learn to trust God more fully, knowing that in His perfect timing, He will bring the right relationships into their lives, relationships that will further their mission, not hinder it. 6. The role of personal growth in isolation. In times of solitude, the chosen ones are given the precious opportunity to engage in deep reflection and spiritual growth. This period of isolation is not simply a time of waiting. It is a time for self-discovery, spiritual refinement, and a clearer understanding of the divine purpose that awaits. Just as a seed must grow in the dark soil before it can bear fruit, the chosen ones must undergo a similar process of growth in the quiet of solitude before they can step fully into the calling God has placed on their lives. During these seasons of isolation, the chosen ones are led to reflect on their inner selves, their motives, their desires, and their relationship with God. It is a time to strip away the distractions of the world and focus solely on aligning with God's will. In this space, they are able to confront fears, insecurities, and weaknesses that might have otherwise gone unexamined. Solitude invites them to look inward, ask difficult questions, and allow God to speak to their hearts. Through this process of reflection, the chosen ones experience personal growth that is essential for fulfilling their divine calling. It is in these quiet moments that they often gain the clarity and understanding they need to move forward. They begin to recognize their purpose more fully and are empowered to take the steps necessary to walk the path God has set before them. Solitude offers a deeper understanding of one's mission, shaping the individual into the person God needs them to be. This time of personal growth also strengthens their relationship with God. As they learn to rely solely on Him, their trust in His guidance deepens. Their faith becomes unshakable, and they are better prepared for the challenges ahead. The trials of isolation are not meant to break them, but to build them into stronger, more resolute individuals who are fully aligned with God's will. Personal growth in solitude is not optional for the chosen ones. It is essential. This period of introspection and spiritual development is vital for them to step into the fullness of their calling, equipped with the wisdom, strength, and clarity they need to fulfill the purpose God has designed for them. 7. Transforming solitude into strength. For many, the idea of solitude may seem like a weakness, something to avoid or fear. However, for the chosen ones, solitude is a powerful source of inner strength and spiritual growth. In these quiet, isolated moments, God is at work, transforming them into resilient, wise individuals who are fully dependent on Him. The process of solitude is not a sign of frailty. Rather, it is a divine tool used to build strength, deepen faith, and develop the spiritual maturity necessary for fulfilling their greater purpose. Solitude offers the chosen ones an opportunity to grow in ways that would not be possible amidst the distractions of everyday life. In the silence, they learn to rely fully on God. They discover that their strength does not come from the world around them, but from the deep, unwavering foundation of faith they are building in their relationship with God. It is in these solitary moments that they learn to trust God more deeply, to hear His voice more clearly, and to stand firm in their convictions. This time of isolation allows them to reflect on their past experiences, gain wisdom from their struggles, and prepare for the challenges ahead. It is a time when the trials of life can be viewed through a new lens, one of growth and transformation. Instead of seeing difficulties as obstacles, the chosen ones learn to see them as opportunities for spiritual growth. They understand that each challenge faced in solitude only strengthens them, helping to build resilience that will carry them through their divine mission. Solitude also serves to refine the character of the chosen ones, molding them into individuals who are spiritually mature and capable of leading others. It is through isolation that they learn patience, perseverance, and the importance of relying on God's timing. Far from being a period of weakness, solitude becomes a time of profound strength and transformation. As they emerge from this season of isolation, they are stronger, wiser, and more prepared to walk in the fullness of God's calling. In the quiet, the chosen ones discover a strength that only solitude can provide, a strength rooted in their dependence on God and their commitment to His purpose. Through this process, they grow into the individuals God has called them to be. 8. Embracing the gift of solitude. For many, solitude can feel like an unwelcome companion, a sign of being abandoned or left behind. However, for the chosen ones, solitude should not be feared, but embraced as a precious gift, a divine opportunity to grow closer to God and align more fully with His will. This time of isolation is not a punishment or a sign of neglect, but a necessary part of their journey, one that allows for deeper spiritual connection and greater clarity in their mission. In a world that thrives on constant interaction and noise, solitude offers the space to hear God's voice more clearly. It is in the quiet that the chosen ones can begin to strip away the distractions that often cloud their relationship with God. When everything else fades away, they can focus solely on Him, seeking His guidance and direction for their lives. It is during these moments of stillness that they often experience the most profound connection with the Creator. Embracing solitude also offers the chance for spiritual alignment. It's a time to reflect on one's purpose, to realign with God's plan, and to ensure that the path being walked is the one He has set before them. In the silence, the chosen ones can examine their hearts and minds, ensuring that their desires are in line with God's desires for them. Solitude becomes a time for recalibration, helping them to refocus on what truly matters, living out their divine purpose with clarity, courage, and commitment. This time alone also deepens the relationship with God. Just as a relationship with a friend or partner requires time and attention to grow, so too does a relationship with God. Solitude allows the chosen ones to build a deeper intimacy with Him, learning to trust Him fully and surrender their will to His. In these quiet moments, they become more attuned to His presence, more aware of His guidance, and more confident in the calling He has placed on their lives. Instead of seeing solitude as something to be feared or avoided, the chosen ones are called to embrace it as a sacred time, one that draws them closer to God, aligns them with His purpose, and strengthens their faith. This time of isolation is not a detour. It is an essential part of their spiritual journey, preparing them for the greater work God has planned. Embrace the season of isolation with faith and trust. As we've explored, solitude is not a sign of abandonment, but a necessary part of the journey for those chosen by God. It is in these quiet, isolated moments that God is doing His most profound work within you, refining your spirit, strengthening your faith, and preparing you for the greater purpose He has set before you. Solitude is a time to grow closer to God, to align your heart with His will, and to become the person He has destined you to be. So, If you find yourself in this season of isolation, do not fear it or resent it. Embrace it with faith and trust, knowing that God is using this time to shape you for something far greater than you can imagine. Remember, your journey is unique, and this time of solitude is a divine preparation for the calling that lies ahead. Trust in God's plan for your life and know that He is always with you, even in the moments when it feels like you're walking alone. If this message resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Join us as we continue to walk together in faith, trusting in God's perfect timing and purpose. You are not alone. God is preparing you for something great.